Hi, this is Tekken57. Welcome back to my video tutorial series. This tutorial is going to be focusing on how to create custom yobj files. Now, I've done 4 tutorials before this on how to create custom yobj files. However, we've discovered a lot since I've done these tutorials. So the process is a lot simpler and a lot easier with the new discovery that we've made. So I've decided to just re-record a custom yobj tutorial to show you guys a quicker method of doing your own custom wrestler mods. Okay, so for the purpose of this tutorial, I'm using a mesh which I've grabbed from Creation Studio. This is a created wrestler created by Peja12. However, the principles that I'm talking about in this tutorial apply to any mesh that you could have grabbed from any game. Okay, so for this tutorial, I have a head mesh which I've also combined with the eye socket meshes, which is normally object 16. And then I have the torso and the arm meshes, which I've ripped from Creation Studio. I've chosen to combine these into a single mesh rather than importing all of these individually. The choice is yours. I prefer to do it in this way because it's much quicker, and if I'm rigging the model at a later stage, it's much easier to rig one object than it is to rig 3 separate objects. And also it saves you time from having to re-weight certain parts because the arms don't connect to the torso correctly, etc. So it's just a quicker way of doing it. However, the choice is yours. Okay, so I have the meshes prepared already. I've combined the meshes using the collapse modifier, and I've also applied a vertex weld to these of 0.01, just so that the meshes are joined and any overlapping vertices are combined. Then I've given a mesh smooth of 0.1 and a pro optimizer modifier as well of 99.5. This is not always necessary, but I've chosen to do this because it retriangulates the meshes so that if there's any deformed faces or triangles which you cannot see, which will later on mess up the weighting of the file, the Pro Optimizer and Mesh Smooth will take care of these. Alright, so now that we have the meshes prepared, I'm just going to select both the meshes and I'm going to give it a normal modifier. The normal modifier is required so that when we're exporting it to NUF, the meshes will appear in game, because the normals in the game is flipped as compared to any other engine. Alright, so I'm going to select the head object first, and I'm going to click on File, Export, Export Selected, and I'm going to select where I want to put this into. Okay, so I've got a folder in my work directory which is called Meshes. So I'm going to export into this directory. We need to export into the NUF format. I'm going to call this object 0. Because this is the head object. Okay, we need to select Dark Age of Camelot. We need to ensure that we have generated strips selected, and we have also selected the normals. Okay, thereafter I'm going to click on Export. Alright, and then it's created a NUF file for us. Now I'm going to do the same with the torso object. So I'm going to click on Export Selected. I'm going to call this object 1. I'm going to leave it as NUF, and then once again ensure Dark Age of Camelot is selected. Generate strips and normals must be selected as well. Alright, so we have object 0 and we have object 1. Now I like to rig the custom meshes to a wrestler which has more or less some of the attire parts that I require when I'm creating the wrestler mod. So because I'm creating Bryan Adams, who uses a singlet in this instance, I'm going to rig this to Sting, and I'm choosing to use the Wolfpack version of Sting because he also has a beard, which I can also use for Bryan Adams at a later stage. However, you can rig this to any mesh that you want to. Alright, so I'm going to open up Wolfpack Sting in X-Ray using the Control N option. Alright, I'm just going to look at the objects which are listed and see which ones I need and which ones I don't need. Alright, so 24 and 25 you definitely don't need. These are low res versions of the eyes and the head. Okay, I don't need the gloves. The beard I want. And also I don't want the boots, because Bryan Adams actually uses different boots. So I'm going to take boots from another wrestler and put this into this file. I want the singlet and everything else we need as well. Okay, so I'm going to click on extract all, and I'm going to put this into the meshes directory. Alright, so we don't need object 0, object 1, object 2 and object 3, because these are now in our custom NIF files. Alright, so let's delete those. So object 0, 1, 2 and 3, we're going to delete those. Okay, and then let's delete all of the other ones that we don't need as well. So 24 and 25 definitely we don't want. (23) and 22 we don't need. (20), 19 and 18 are all boots, so let's take those out. 20, 19 and 18. Make sure you delete the object info and the header info for the files as well. Alright, so that has everything that we need. So I think we are now ready to, I've missed the header info for object 1, so let's delete that. Alright, so now that we have everything that we need, let's create our custom yobj file. So in X-Ray you can click on File, New yobj file, or you can click on Control P. Okay, we're going to select a yobj file which we're going to use as a base. So because we are rigging to Wolfpack Sting, I'm going to select Wolfpack Sting's yobj file. Okay, thereafter we're going to select all of the meshes that we need. So I'm going to go into the meshes directory. I'm going to select everything that is there. Alright, now you're given options to specify which shaders and the weight counts, etc. for the custom meshes that you've done. So firstly, the first mesh that we have, object 0, is the head. So we must give it a name of m_head. The second one is m_body, which is fine. For the head, we want you to have facial animations. So the number of facial animations which is contained in this file, if you look at the mount bag and the other face objects, you'll see that there's 111 facial animations. So I'm going to set this to 111. Okay, then thereafter we need to specify which shaders we want to use for these objects. Now, because this is the head mesh, we want to select okay, we want to ensure that we're selecting skin, and we're also ensuring that it is the shader for the head. The second one is skin, and we want to ensure that it is for the body. Okay, so the weight count we leave it the same the way it is, and then we click on create yobj. Okay, I'm going to give it a name of 0000, and that's going to create our object for us. Okay, if I open this file, alright, so we can see that our custom mesh has been imported. Alright, and it has all of the other meshes that we need. Now, before we can import this into the game, you need to ensure that this custom mesh actually references the correct textures, so that it will load the head textures and the body textures appropriately. Now, in order to do this, you need to set these values in the shader parameters. Okay, so if you right click and you click on edit shader parameters, you'll notice that there are values for diffuse, normal map, etc. Okay, you can go and set these manually by clicking on edit materials and then finding the correct texture values. So for instance, all colors 7 and head is 1, etc. Okay, a quicker way to do this is to just open up the Sting yobj file, and we can export the shader parameter values from here directly. So let's click on edit shader parameters. I'm going to click on export values. Okay, that's for the head. I'm going to do the same thing for the body. Let's just call the shader parameters body so we don't get confused. Alright, let's open up the custom mesh again. Edit shader parameters. I'm going to click on import values, and I'm going to select the values that we've just selected, and I'm select the values that we've just exported. Save changes. Same for the body. Alright, cool. So we now have the custom yobj file. So we need to rig this to the bones in the Sting Wolfpack file for it to run correctly in game. That's going to be the next step. But before we do that, I actually need boots as well for this wrestler. So the wrestler file that has the boots that I want is actually the Batista 2K19 yobj file. So there's two ways in which you can do this. You can either take the boots from Batista and you can create a custom yobj file like we've done just now, whereby we import everything into the Sting Wolfpack file, but that means you need to rig the boots to the Sting Wolfpack skeleton in order for it to move correctly. The second option is you can just create a second yobj file which you can put into the game. Now, the easiest way to do this is to just click on extract for the boots. Okay, and now I'm going to create a custom yobj file using only the boots, and I'm going to use Batista's yobj file as the base. In this way I don't need to re-rig the file, and it's a quicker way of doing it. This will also create a much smaller file which you use as a secondary yobj. So this means that you can import multiple yobj files from different wrestlers to create the tire that you want without having to worry about the file size. So I'll show you this in a minute. So once again, Control P. Okay, I'm going to select Batista's yobj as the file that we want to use as a base. I'm going to click on Select Meshes, and I'm going to select Object 22, which is the boots, and I'm going to click on Create yobj. Now I'm going to name this 5607 because this is going to be a secondary yobj. You can use 5607 right up to 5619, whatever name you choose, or 001A, 001B, etc. Okay, 5607. I click on Create. Alright, and now if I click on Open, you'll notice that this file is only 480 kilobits, whereas if you look at the Batista file, that was 20 megs. Okay, and now this is now just the boots. Okay, and because we've used Batista's yobj as a base, we don't need to re-read this as well. Okay, so I'm going to take this and I'm going to put this into another folder which I've called Extracted, which is going to contain all of the files that we need. Okay, and then thereafter I'm going to take our custom mesh as well. Just remember we need to rig this file as well. I'm just going to place this here to show you what happens if we don't rig it. Alright, so let's do that. Let's prepare the pack file for the wrestler that we need. Okay, so firstly let's get all of the textures that we need into the directory that we want. So I've extracted all of Sting Wolfpack's files here. I've taken Batista's boot textures and I've copied all of the MR and the head textures which I've created as well, and I'm just going to create a new texture archive out of this. So I'm going to select Control N in X-Packer, and I'm going to select all of the textures that we have in the in this folder, and I'm going to click on Create Texture Archive. We'll call this 000A. Alright, we have the texture archive created. I'm just going to take this and put this into this directory. I'm just going to create a new pack file from this. Now before we do this, there's a few files that you need to delete from this directory. If you don't delete this, you'll find that the game crashes because we've removed the torso and the arm objects from the original Y object file. So Launch Reborn has actually figured out that there are certain controller files in here that if you remove, you can add whichever custom Y object files you want without having to preserve the torso and the arm objects. So the files that we need to delete is the 00CD, the E1 file can go. E6 is the file that usually controls the shape of the beard. Because we have created a custom head object, you'll find that this is now going to create issues because the beard can't map to the custom head that we've created. All of the F files need to go because these are for Creation Studio. Any other weird files that you find here, like 0011, the 100 file can go. 2580 is fine because that's for the hair animation, and 2715 is a hair file, so we need that. 5607 is the Batista boots that we've added. So let's delete these files. Okay, I like to leave the CE as a zlib file because when I'm creating masking later on, I don't need to go and recreate the pack. I can just compress and inject into this. Alright, now with all the files that we need in a single directory, let's go into X-Packer and click on Ctrl+P. Select files, and then thereafter let's select all of the files. Okay, I'm going to click on create pack file. I'm just going to call this file Brian. Doesn't matter what you call it actually. Alright, and then thereafter I'm going to create a pack file to correspond with the slot number that I'm injecting into. So I've already done this. I'm using slot 460, so therefore I'm calling this 46002, which 02 meaning that this is the in-ring pack file. So let's do that. Let's open this file using Ctrl+Q and ensure that the name is correct on the inside as well, so that your package file has the correct slot assigned to it. So in this case 46002. Click on inject, and I'm going to select the package file that we created earlier, which is brian.pack. Alright, cool. So the pack file has been prepared, and we can copy this into the directory while we are working on the rigging, etc. Alright, so now that this the pack file has been prepared, before I forget, let's inject the custom head textures that we've created. And the all color textures as well. The MR and the normals are in the 00. The MR and the normals are in the 000A file, so we don't need to worry about that. Alright, so now let's work on the rigging. So let's open up the mesh that we created. Okay, I'm going to export object 0 and object 1. Okay, and now we need to rig these meshes to the Sting Wolfpack skeleton. Alright, so let's get into the directory so I can find these files easily. Okay, now you need to import the Sting Wolfpack model into 3D Studio Max. The file you need to use for importing this is the The script file that you need to use to import this is the www2k18 PC exclusive file, the one that I've created, which will import the model with the correct weights and the correct orientation. Okay, I've already done this. It takes a little bit of time to import, so I've just done this already to save some time. I'm just going to use a batch importer to import these. You can import these individually or use a batch importer if you want. Alright, I'm just going to select the files that we want to import using the batch importer, and I'm going to click on import all. Alright, so now we've imported the files. we need to rig this to the skeleton. Now the easiest way in which to do this is to use the skin wrap modifier. So I'm going to select object 0, I'm going to click on the modifiers tab, and I'm going to select skin wrap. Alright, ensure that vertex deformation is selected. Set your fallout value as low as you can go, which is 0.01, and ensure that weight all points is selected. Alright, thereafter I'm going to select which meshes we want to copy the skin from. So I like to add the meshes to which this mesh is attached to. So in this case the head is attached to the head, the torso and the arms. So let's select those. So let's go head, torso and both arms. With all the meshes selected, we are now ready to create a skin for this. So we're going to click on convert to skin. Okay, with the skin modifier selected, we also need to specify the number of bones which will affect the skin. So this needs to match the weight count that we specified for the mesh. Because we specified a weight count of 7, we need to specify 7 as the bone effect limit. I'm going to click on scripting, run script, and you need to run my bone weight script file, which is export bone weights to file. Okay, I'm just going to put this in my work directory. So let's put this here. I'm going to call this object 0.txt. Alright, and now we need to do the same thing for the torso object. So let's select the skin wrap modifier. Okay, the settings should still be the same. Fall off at 0.01 and weight all points selected. I'm going to click on add. Once again, whichever meshes this mesh touches, we will need to select. So firstly, let me just hide these glove objects. We don't need these. I'm going to need to select the arm object, so let's just get rid of those glove objects. Alright, so let's go back into skin wrap. Okay, we click on add. Once again, whichever meshes are touching this, so the head, torso, left arm and right arm, and also the hand objects, because the wrist connects to the hand as well. Alright, so we have all of the meshes selected. We're going to click on convert to skin. Okay, and this is now going to convert it into a skin modifier. Once again, bone effect limit should be set to 7. And we're going to click on run script, export bone weights to file. And this file will be called object1.txt. I'm going to click on save. Alright, so now we have rigged the custom meshes to the skeleton and the weights have been exported. Alright, so now that we've created the weight files, we are ready to import these back into the mesh. But I'm just going to show you what happens if we don't actually import the weights. You'll find that the meshes that we've imported will be in T-pose and won't actually move with the rest of the skeleton. So let's see what that looks like. Alright, so you can see the arms and the torso and the head are not really moving with the rest of the skeleton. So let's get out of that. And now let's go and import the weights into this file. So let's click on import weights. and let's click on inject and inject that custom object file again back into our pack file. Alright, and now let's do the and now let's copy this back to our game directory. Alright, if you look at the mesh now in game, you'll see that the mesh is moving correctly with the rest of the skeleton. You find that the arms and the torso and the head, etc. are moving without any issues. Alright, so that means our custom mesh has been imported correctly. Now obviously you'll need to scale the attire to fit this mesh. You'll need to connect the wrist to the arms, etc. And you may also need to do the masking, and you will need to position the bones, the eye objects, etc. So that's fairly simple to do. I'm not really going to cover that in the tutorial. If you're not sure how to fix the eye bones and that sort of thing, go into 3D Studio Max, click on scripting and click on run script, and then you use my script, which is import WWE Tekken no weights, which will import the model into 3D Studio Max, and then thereafter you can go and position each of the bones, and then the bones can be exported into a collada file, which can thereafter be imported back into the model. Okay, we'll get back to the bones shortly. Okay, so now your wrestler Y object has been created, it's been rigged, it has the correct textures. You need to now create facial animations for this model. So the way in which I like to do this is I like to import this into Mudbox. Alright, and then once the mesh is imported into Mudbox, I like to go into the Sculpt Layers tab and click on New Layer, and then create animations for each of the corresponding animations. So for instance, eye closed, mouth open, etc. So the way in which you determine which animations to create is to open the original Y object file, which you use as a base, in this case Wolfpack Sting. Right click, load animations 2K18 upwards. Okay, and then thereafter you look for the corresponding animations that you want to create. Okay, I don't create all of the animations which are contained in this file. It would take much too long to do that. So the animations that I like to create are the ones whereby the eyelids are closed. So if I can find one of those. Okay, so the one where the bottom eyelid is closed, I normally like to create for both sides. And then also where the top eyelid is closed for both sides. Then for me the most important one is animation 45, which is the mouth open. I think with Sting it's actually a different number, so let's just check. Animation 47 in this case, mouth open. And then thereafter I like to create all of the frowning textures, like the, what numbers is it here? Okay, so in this case 55, 56, 57 where smiling, and then 58 where he's got a much bigger smile. So the one way is like a bit of a sad expression where the mouth is in, and the two smiling animations for both sides. So all in all I create about maybe 14 or 15 animations, and then thereafter I inject this into the custom Y object file. So I go into detail as to how to create facial animations in one of my other tutorials. So the process is still pretty much the same, so you can go and watch that tutorial if you need more information on how that works. Alright, so let's just look at the bones quickly before I end this tutorial. So if you look at the placement of the eye bones, okay, in this case both the eye bones seem to be positioned quite nicely, so it's within the eyes. Let's just look at where the tongue bones are positioned. Okay, the tongue bones look alright also, but I think let me just move this a little bit back. just to demonstrate. Alright, and okay, so I'm going to select all of the bones that I need to import back into this model. In this case, tongue bones. I'm going to select the jaw and the eyes as well, so let's select all of those. File, export. Let's put this into our work directory. I'm just call this bones, and I'm going to select Colada. Alright, and I'm going to click on Ctrl+B in X-Ray. We'll select our mesh. And then thereafter I'm going to start importing all of the bones that we need. So everything is contained in the one Colada file, so I'm just going to select bones. Alright, cool. So the bones have been positioned, and you just need to create animations and position the eye and the mouth meshes properly, and you are pretty much done with creating a yobj file. So let's just see what that looks like. Alright, so now that the bones have been positioned correctly, you find that the eyes and the mouth, etc. all move fine. Thank you for watching this tutorial. I hope it's been helpful to you. And this newer method of creating custom yobj files will speed up your process of creating wrestler mods. If you have any further questions, you're welcome to post it in the comments below, and I'll try as far as possible to answer them as best as I can. Until next time, happy modding and take care.